We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Supernatural Hour. I am your host, Castle. And with me tonight, we have got Raven.
Hello.
We have got Rogue.
Hi.
Which is not Ray-Ban, by the way. Someone thought I said Ray-Ban, like sunglasses.
No, just
not
Raven.
So much. And then we have everybody's favorite stepdad named Chad.
Hey.
Today's episode is on telekinesis. In particular, besides just telekinesis in general, we're going to discuss a fellow named Uri Geller. And this is going to be an interesting ride.
Yuri's one of those names that makes me uncomfortable because all you have to do is put an NAL after it and it becomes urinal, which is like a bathroom fixture, urinal.
Yes, I know that.
Okay, you're looking at me like I got a booger or something.
That was the big sister looking at the little brother look of, what's wrong with you?
I had to throw a dad joke in there. How could I not?
So, telekinesis. I think most everybody knows basically what telekinesis is.
Right. If you've seen one of the Carrie movies, I think there's like three remakes of the original.
Right. It's basically moving objects, bending objects with the power of your brain. I'm using my mind to bend this spoon. I don't know why you want your spoons bent, but that's one of the common things. I'm going to bend the spoon.
I hate when my spoons are bent. You pull it out of the drawer and it's kind of twisted weird because I got stuck in the garbage disposal. And you try and bend it back straight and it just is never the same.
No, it's not.
It's never the same.
So you're not using the telekinesis. You're just not using it right.
Well, I try. I sit there and stare for like 10 minutes, but then I just realize that my food's getting cold.
Yeah, bent spoons are the worst. The worst. So some people call it psychokinesis as well. That's another name for it. It's kind of like levitation, and some people say that levitation is part of the telekinesis. So like most things in the paranormal world, it just kind of depends on your personal opinion of what exactly telekinesis is. There's one theory that's been put forward to explain telekinesis, and that it's a concentration of energy from a person's mind that somehow alters the energy structure of the item that they're focusing on, so the spoon. And then when the mind's stream of energy, as it were, is released, the object just reforms itself according to the energy thoughts from your mind. So that's kind of the thought behind it. So, for example, if you're bending a spoon, because we're talking about spoons, it's like looking at the spoon and just thinking, bending. And then the spoon just is like, all right, and it bends.
Well, with Uri Geller, he produces heat. He supposedly
let's use our air quotes.
Produces heat.
Produces.
Yes.
I want to see some real air quotes. If we're
I
doing
did.
Air
Did you see me do it?
Right.
Rogue didn't do air quotes.
My apologies. I had a little one over here.
You're forgiven.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Because I believe Uri Geller is going to have a lot of air quotes tonight.
Right. So if you're a Star Wars fan, this is also some telekinesis. And one of the examples you could use is when you see Luke Skywalker
Use
levitating.
The Force, Luke.
Exactly.
Luke, use the Force.
Imagine C-3PO in his chair, kind of buzzing around the Ewoks. Telekinesis. It's the Force. We could just call it the Force. Uri Geller thinks he has the Force.
Yes, he does. I ran into a few other people on YouTube that think they have the Force.
So there's a quote by Kurt Vonnegut, and I don't know who Kurt Vonnegut is, but he said this. He says, "You're so telekinetic, in fact, that you can alter the entire universe with a single thought. Those who believe in telekinesis, raise my hand." I thought that was pretty clever.
You know what? Can I interject here? And hopefully I'm not jumping too far ahead.
No, you're fine.
From a religious standpoint, I mean, if we want to look at religion, in particular Christianity, because that's the religion I'm familiar with. If you look in like the Bible, for instance, was it Elijah who could move mountains with faith? You know, and there's accounts of angels and God standing in the air kind of thing.
What about the crossing of the Red Sea?
The crossing of the Red Sea. Parting of the Red Sea.
The parting of the Red Sea, excuse me.
To me, telekinesis is not that far-fetched. Kind of maybe a personal theory of mine. You know, if God can create the earth or the universe with a word, you know, and I'm going to go under the supposition that we're the children of God, why wouldn't we all have that capability on some level? And my thought is maybe it's an untapped capability that we don't know how to use, or we don't have the proper faith, or whatever the key or password is to use that.
Or even the need to right
or
now.
the need to.
Why do you need to bend a spoon with your brain? Just pick it up and bend it with your hands, for heaven's sakes.
But maybe some people figured that out to an extent that they can bend their silverware.
Well, I watched something that was kind of intriguing. So what if you're paralyzed and you don't have motion of your arm and leg? So telekinesis could help you take care of yourself, bring things to you. And they're working with robots now, Elon Musk, so your brain can control the robotic arms to help people that are paralyzed.
Well, that's awesome.
That's a form of telekinesis.
And Castle, going back to what you said, I don't disagree with you. I do think that telekinesis could be possible and that it's not for most people right now. And I do think if someone is able to somehow tap into that it could happen.
I agree. Like in my research today, somebody did call it like a seventh sense. It's just not something that we've evolved into using maybe at this point.
Well, the reality is, I mean, because, we've all worked with and dealt with psychics, clairvoyance. Oh, my goodness, Raven, my mind is going blank. What is...
Mediums?
Mediums, but what's the thing where you touch things? And
Psychometry.
Thank you, psychometry. I mean, these are all different abilities and gifts, and we've seen them demonstrated and used to an extent. So really, how far-fetched is it to be able to move an object theoretically versus being able to tap into the spirit realm and get this other information or sense this other information where it may particularly be a sense.
Right.
And again, if we're all children of a supreme being, so to speak, I would assume he has that ability or a similar ability. It makes sense to me that maybe some people can, to an extent, tap into that like yay much. And I'm using my index finger and thumb like barely apart to
like pincers.
Like little pincers. So I don't know. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I don't think it's a very common thing.
Right. And I think like anything, you need to be careful because there's some mediums that have a true spiritual gift. And I had someone recently ask me if I believed in mediums. And I said I do, with some caveats, as long as you can tell that it's a true spiritual gift from God as opposed to magic tricks that have been taught to you by the darker side. So I'm very, very careful when it comes to mediums. It also is how the medium conducts themselves. If they're doing it strictly for monetary gain, I might be a little more hesitant. And I don't want to say I don't believe you. I'm just a little bit more hesitant just based on some of my personal beliefs and some personal scriptures. And so I don't want to bang on anybody who does, but I tend to be very careful of who I reach out to. But the same thing with the telekinesis. It's like, are they really telekinetic or are they doing some magic tricks for money?
Illusionists like Penn and Teller.
Exactly.
Who will tell you that they're illusionists.
And there's some things with Uri Geller where it was shown in some instances that he could use stage tricks to, in some cases, bend the spoons. But, and I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead, the government also, back in the 70s, brought him in for some tests to see if he could really do it as part of their like psyops kind of stuff during the Cold War. And they felt there was enough there to continue looking into it. So, I mean, you've got one hand that says that, yeah, it was like stage tricks and illusionist stuff and parlor trick type stuff. But then again, you got the government looking at it going, maybe it's real. So then again, the same government spends $20,000 on a toilet seat. So I don't know.
Right. So we actually are going to get into that in just a second. But before we get too far ahead, I do want to explain one more little thing of telekinesis. It's from this book called God's Debris. And it basically says after one paragraph, you'll become telekinetic. And after the second paragraph, you'll understand this newfound power and how far it goes. So here we go. So work with me. Everyone's going to have their telekinetic moment. Ready?
We're going to hear the whole paragraph?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like super short.
So when this is done, I'll
And it's
I'll
super
be able
short.
to do it.
Watch, she's going to read the first paragraph, then there's going to be a paywall.
To get more, please send. No. So first of all, you're going to close your eyes and you're going to think of a pink giraffe for 5 seconds. Okay? That's it. It's actually a sentence, but he threw in a couple more words in there just to make it a paragraph. So close your eyes and think of a pink giraffe. Okay? You've just performed telekinesis. How is a thought telekinesis, right? So this isn't my theory. This is someone else's.
By the way, don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Yeah, if you're driving and listening to this, don't do that. It says, you just changed the entire universe. So you just thought of a pink giraffe, or maybe something equivalent for a few seconds. That was a thought, okay? So what is a thought? A thought is simply a series of electrical impulses in your mind and then it's accompanied by neurotransmitters. Okay, so what is a neurotransmitter? Suddenly everyone's like, are we listening to like the Science Channel? What the heck? They are molecules, and like all matter, they've got gravity. Okay, so you've thought a thought, all these things and gravities going on in your brain. I did not write this. This is an example I found on the internet, so do not send hate mail to me. So gravity is a force that affects all matter. So every bit of matter is affected by gravity. And gravity affects other things. Y'all with me? Everyone's looking like they're not with me. No one's with me. That's okay. Keep listening.
I'm with you.
This gets better. Do not turn the podcast off. So when you thought of this pink giraffe, you actually made a small positive disruption in your gravitational field. This is all theoretical. Okay. And that small disruption led to a small change in the position of every atom in the universe.
Dang, that's deep.
That is the theory behind it. That's why he says everybody can do telekinesis.
That seems like one of those theories would be better if you're impaired.
Yeah. Anyway.
Like peyote, acid.
So some people think that gravity goes to the speed of light. No one really knows. It's kind of up for debate. What he's trying to say is telekinesis, if you think of it that way, every one of us is telekinetic and can do it right now. Whether or not you believe that, and by the looks I'm getting in this room, people here are not buying
Right.
it.
That's kind of like the butterfly effect. I don't know if you
That's
guys
what
are
I was
familiar with the
thinking
butterfly
as
effect.
well.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm buying it, but it was an interesting theory.
And for the listeners who don't know, the butterfly effect is the thought is a butterfly flapping its wings can move air, which moves something else, which moves something else in turn, which eventually can cause a hurricane. That's a butterfly effect. That sounds like
Similarly,
the butterfly
yeah.
effect.
Right. That little gravitational pull in your head obviously isn't going to float C3PO around, but apparently it does move gravity somehow. I don't
Okay.
get it either. But anyway,
All right.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, Science 101 from Raven today
There you
on
go.
the Supernatural Hour.
Don't test me on it. I will probably fail. So
All right.
let's go back to Uri Geller and the CIA. So back in the 70s, the CIA
1973 to be specific.
said... Yep. I won't tell you how old I was then, but I was alive.
I was not.
I was.
You were thought of.
I was either thought of or I was
You were cooking.
cooking.
He was cooking. They actually had... they brought in a bunch of people. And Uri Geller just happened to be one of them. And they had a bunch of tests. And one of the tests was they would draw a picture. They had a photo. And they would ask all these people that they brought in to guess what had been drawn.
Sounds kind of like
I was
the
gonna
starting
say,
of Ghostbusters 1.
I was just going to talk about that documentary. At the beginning, where Dr. Venkman is
Testing
is
college
testing
students.
college students. Yeah.
Mhm, with electrical shock therapy.
Yeah, and so some of the pictures that they drew, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm just moving on. So some of the pictures that they had was a spaceship, and Uri drew the spaceship, and then they had another one, a picture of grapes, and he drew the grapes. He did enough tests well enough that the CIA said, yeah, this guy's legit. And everyone, oh, he's legit. And he went on, he's originally from Israel. I don't know if that's where he still lives. Just random little fact there in the middle of whatever. But he became very wealthy. And, everyone thought he was just the bomb.
When I was looking into Uri Geller, I found at some point that he was using a special metal. And it was that special metal he was creating these spoons out of that was helping him to do this. And that metal would actually dissolve in water. But when I tried to find the name of it today, I couldn't.
You couldn't find it.
No.
The U.S. ran a program for 20 years to train psychic operatives. And there's actually a book about it. And they made a movie adaptation in 2009 with George Clooney. It's called The Men Who Stare at Goats.
I think I saw that movie.
I did see that movie.
Did you?
I did.
I've never even heard of this movie, so it must not
Really?
have done really
It's
well.
actually pretty good if I remember right.
It was kind of boring, but it's kind of funny. It's kind of George Clooney.
Well, George Clooney in it, and The Men
Yeah.
Who Stare at Goats. I have to watch it just to find out why they stared at goats. So one of the things that Uri said they had him do is, he said they wanted me to stand outside the Russian embassy in Mexico and erase floppy disks being flown out by Russian agents. He had to get near someone signing a nuclear deal and bombard him with sign, sign, sign. So that's kind of what the CIA wanted to use these operatives for.
To help manipulate others into doing things.
An influence.
Yep.
So the George Clooney movie, I think they're fainting goats and the goats fall over. It's been like 15 years since I've seen that.
I just know that
love-
I've seen it, but I can't remember the details on the movie.
I love fainting
It's
goats.
been a
They're
while.
so cute.
I can just see George Clooney sitting there he's sitting in a chair staring at a goat, waiting for this goat to fall over. But I think they're fainting goats. Now I'm going to have to Google.
So there's a filmmaker named Vikram Jayanti, and I'm sure I mispronounced that. So if you know him and are listening, or if you're listening, sorry. But in 2013...
No, we're not sorry if he's listening.
Well, I'm sorry that I slaughtered his name.
Oh, okay.
Full
We're
of-
not.
If
We're
he is
happy
listening,
that
that's
he's
pretty
listening.
cool.
Good.
Yeah, reach out to us if you're listening.
Full of dad jokes today, aren't we? So in 2013, he released a film called The Secret Life of Uri Geller, Psychic Spy? ? And he claimed that Geller was a secret agent for the CIA and possibly for the Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence agency. This filmmaker, Jayanti, told a newspaper that Uri did have a controversial reputation. A lot of people think he's a fraud. A lot of people think he's a trickster and make things up. But at the same time, he has a huge following and a history of doing some things that nobody could explain. And Uri actually made a career from TV appearances worldwide. And he did all sorts of tricks like bending spoons, making clocks stop. I saw one, we watched a YouTube one where he had a compass and, you know, he would make the compass move. And to show people that he didn't have magnets on him, he like stripped down to, he's sitting in a boat and he stripped down to where he's just like in a skivvies. You know, he kept taking clothes off and I was like, where is this going?
Start playing the stripper music.
Yeah. And then he would describe hidden things and, you know, draw pictures. And I mean, he's made a pretty decent living off of his telekinesis.
One thing that's kind of interesting, you mentioned that people said that he's kind of controversial as far as what he can do. And honestly, having been involved in the paranormal field for as many years as I have been, anybody and everybody who makes any kind of paranormal claim, regardless of how legitimate it is or isn't, is controversial. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, we look at like, say, Peaches, who used to be on the podcast a while back. I mean, she was a psychic, she's a medium, and I've seen her abilities. I know firsthand what she really can do, but I guarantee there's people out there who would say she's full of BS and she's a fraud. It just, you know, and honestly, going on investigations, there's people who would say that you guys are charlatans for charging people money to go to Family Tree or Dalton's or anywhere else. It's just, honestly, those who don't know or understand are always going to call someone a fraud. I'm not saying that Uri Geller was legit. I honestly don't know. But I just find it fascinating that there's always those who are just firm not believers who are going to just call BS on anything, regardless, just because it's something different.
Right. One of the little jokes I make, you know, when it comes to the paranormal field in general, it's really hard to prove anything. I mean, we can get evidence, we can do our best. You know, every time we do an investigation, we get a little more knowledge. And I always tell people, when I die, God might pat me on the head and say, you are totally off base, but look at you, so cute. Look at you trying to figure things out.
I hope that's what he says when I die.
It's kind of what I'm going for,
If I'm
too.
wrong, I hope it's not like a, step in the other room, we need to have a chat.
I know. You know, really when it comes to the paranormal, it's our best guess. And that's one reason why I find it so fascinating, because you don't know. It's a mystery, and you're just trying to put all those puzzle pieces together. That's why I find it fascinating. However, the more I've researched Uri Geller, the more I think he was just kind of an awesome magician. Sorry if you're listening. But
a conjurer. That was the word that I heard used for him, and I thought that was a pretty good word for him.
Now, let's say, just for the sake of discussion, that he's an absolute total fraud. I've seen some of the stuff he did, and if he's just simply a magician, an illusionist, he's really good at it.
Right.
So I will give him that.
And that's okay.
Right. I had never really heard of Uri Geller until I was just kind of scrolling through the internet. The reason why a lot of people probably have not heard of him is he was exposed as a fraud on the Johnny Carson show.
Oh,
And
I didn't see that.
and his career just took a serious nosedive after that.
Yeah, Johnny had set up with his team and with Uri Geller's team all of the, I'll call them props, the vials, the canisters, the ball, the things that he'd do, the spoons.
Keys was a big one.
Keys. But he got all of these different things and told them what they wanted him to get, and Johnny Carson's team got those all up and set them up, so that he had nothing to do with them. And then he had a difficult time. I don't know if it's called performing, but he had a difficult
little performance
time.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, Johnny Carson really liked magicians. It's one of the things that kind of really fascinated him. And he worked with, and you have to take this into consideration, he actually talked to one of Uri Geller's rivals, a well-known magician. And he said, okay, I want to bring Uri Geller on, and I want to see, what his abilities are. And the magician told Johnny, he said, find out what props that he requires, but he says, get them for him, but do not let his people touch them at all. And so Johnny actually told Uri this on this episode. He said, I've got these items on the table. Nobody has touched them except my crew. I could feel Uri on this YouTube recording
Get nervous.
Kind of like your dog. I can hear barking in the background right now.
Yes. Did he escape and get up here earlier?
He's coming up to protect us. You don't know what Rogue does for a living.
You pet groomer?
That's one of them. Yeah, I'm a pet nutritionist.
She's helping my dog get skinny. So my dog is still a pinhead, but she's getting better. It doesn't take her quite as long to get out the dog door.
Just squeeze through the door.
I am allergic to dogs. It's the saliva.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
One thing to remember is Johnny Carson was actually a magician at one point in his life. He really kind of liked exposing hoaxes.
So he was kind of a Penn and Teller, pre-Penn and Teller.
Right, but he loved being able to say, this person's a hoaxster. It is something that Johnny just liked to do. And so that's one reason why he brought Uri on, because he was so famous. He wanted to see him do these things in front of him, not just on TV, or he wanted them to be, 3 feet away from him.
Yeah, and he gave him every opportunity.
Yeah, and Uri, you could just feel his tension. And he kept saying, and you can find this really easy on YouTube. It's not, you don't have to dig for this if you want to watch it. But he kept saying, sometimes I'm just not on. Sometimes I'm just, I've got to kind of be in the mood. I've got to be ready. Johnny actually kind of had to really convince him to even try on the show.
Yeah, it was a long, not just one segment. It was like 3 segments of the show.
Yeah, if you've ever
There were
watched Johnny
like 2 or
Carson.
3 commercial breaks.
Right, if you've ever watched Johnny Carson, his segments are pretty short.
Yeah.
This one went on for probably 20 minutes, I want to say. That's how long the YouTube clip was, at least.
Wow. Did he have other guests sitting?
He had Ricardo Montalban with him.
Oh,
Con!
I remember. The plane.
I could just visualize Uri Geller sitting there staring at a spoon, shaking like a dog pooping a peach bit, trying to get that thing to bend.
In front of millions of people on Johnny Carson.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they had some film
Serious.
canisters, and I've just lost anybody that was born after 1980. But you used to buy
Film canisters?
film canisters, those little aluminum film canisters. You'd buy film and put the film in your camera that was not attached to your phone.
For those born after 1980, they're about the size of a prescription pill bottle, but they're black to keep the light out of the film.
Or the metal ones.
Yeah,
Both.
these were like aluminum ones. So
Oh, okay.
you might even be too young for those. I'm too young for those.
Yeah, they're plastic by the time I was.
I
able
still
to
remember.
Yeah, these are aluminum ones. And they had water in one of them. And so one of his tricks was he'd hold his hand over it and he could feel the one that had water in it. And he struggled with everything. And I think part of it, because when he first came out, he was pretty cocky. And not cocky, but just, confident and I'm here to do my tricks. And as soon as Johnny told him, no one has touched these items except my crew, is when you could just kind of see his demeanor change and feel his demeanor change. And he knew that
The gig's up here.
the gig's up, that his toast was buttered.
That's too bad. So is Uri still with us, or is he passed on?
He's still around.
But he's just not in the limelight.
No, and he might be doing stuff. I don't even know where he is anymore.
Okay.
Carson kept urging him, kept, and not, I'm not pressuring you, but, here you are, let's do something. And he just kept getting more and more nervous. He couldn't do it. To this day, Uri Geller's biggest critic his name is James the Amazing Randi.
Oh, yes. I seen James the Amazing Randy during my research.
What
He's
the hell
a big
kind of name
debunker.
is? What kind of name? This is James the Incredible Randy.
I don't know.
He's an illusionist as well.
Yep,
So-
the Incredible Randy. What does that mean? Is he's like kind of like, hey,
His name is James Randi, and his magician name is the Incredible Randy. The
Okay.
Amazing
I
Randy.
wasn't sure it was like
Amazing
the
Randy.
British like slang word for horny, and he's like walking around, hey ladies,
I'm Randy.
I'm the Incredible Randy.
So, and this little rivalry is pretty stiff. The Amazing Randi actually wrote a book titled The Truth About Uri Geller, one of the most eye-opening exposés of the decade about psychic claims and magic. That's one title, by the way.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes. And
It must have been in small font.
and we thought Wisps was a long name. So Randi was one of the first to prove that Geller's performances, and again, I'm not saying telekinesis can't happen, but after doing some reading and watching YouTube videos, I kind of think that Uri Geller is just a really good illusionist.
Well, and he may have had some telekinetic properties or things, but limited.
Right.
And he blew it up to be much more than that for the commercial aspects. And
Right.
because he made millions on this.
Well, honestly, if you're going to go commercial, I think anybody who's an entertainer by nature is going to blow up something like that and maybe exaggerate it. Because honestly, if it's hey, I can bend a spoon 1/4 of a millimeter with my mind, no one's going to pay to see that, because you would need like a micrometer to measure that, versus I can bend
Which
a
is-
spoon with dissolvable metal with my mind and bend it in half and make loop-de-loops out of it. That's going to sell tickets and etc.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really any entertainer, just by their nature, is going to make things more grand and exciting, because that's how you get customers
Monetized.
and monetized.
Yeah, but like the CIA, they're interested in that 1/4 of a millimeter measurable
Right, and even just
effect,
from and
because
just from,
it could be used in certain ways and things that they're doing, but that's not going to sell to the public.
right, and even the research that Dan read, because I was familiar with it, but I didn't go like really in depth into the stuff. It sounds like they were more interested in being able to
Influence?
or see the pictures through his mind. I mean, that doesn't sound like the CIA really even cared two wits about bending a spoon as much as they did about being able to draw grapes from a hid poster card. Oh, speaking of telekinesis, I just knocked that over, whatever that was.
It's your phone. It's under the chair.
So
You're welcome. That was me. I
Thank
did,
you.
Castle and his
I
telekinesis.
did it with my mind.
Castle's telekinetic. He's throwing things around. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Amazing Randi and Uri Geller. Randi would famously, I guess he did this very publicly, would compare Uri's magic tricks to the magic tricks you could find on the backs of cereal boxes. And he got,
Damn,
I know,
that's cold.
he got so inflammatory, they actually went to court over this. They settled it outside the courtroom, and I don't think anybody knows really what the settlement was, but yet it went to court. It got pretty ugly.
We don't know how it settled either way or anything, how it ended. It
No.
just
It says,
settled.
It says the conflict was settled outside the courtroom, and no one really knows what they have actually agreed on.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's just a lot of magicians were jealous of his abilities. You know, again, whether actual telekinesis or whether just very good illusionist tricks. Most magicians took off their white gloves, as it were, and branded him just a fraud that used conventional magician's tricks and passed them off as psychic abilities. To me, just reading between the lines, the feeling I get, and I could be wrong, is that the magicians weren't so upset at his tricks, but the fact that he passed them off as psychic abilities as opposed to, I'm a magician.
You know, it's
Right.
kind of funny as you say this. I'm just envisioning Joe Babluth from Arrested Development being kicked out of the Magicians Alliance for having his tricks revealed.
That's
Well,
pretty good.
we recently went to a magic show just back on New Year's, and it was really good. But you know, it was a magic show. You know, it was illusion. It was not billed as a paranormal thing that he's doing with his mind. Now, he blew me away with some of the magic tricks that he did and the illusions that he did, but you know, it was not purported as, oh, this is true magic.
Right. I watched a thing with Houdini, and Houdini actually put a thing out there that said anybody that can come to me with telekinesis and show me how or that it's real, he offered a large sum of money back in the day because he wanted to incorporate that in his act, and nobody could come up and prove it to him.
When we decided on this podcast, we were neither pro Uri Geller or anti Uri Geller. After having done the research, I tend to think that he's just a very good illusionist.
I agree.
And maybe I'm wrong. That being said, they did a report on him. And by they, it's a leading scientific journal by the name of Nature. Did this research, and it was conducted by Stanford Research Institute in California. And this particular article, widely reported by lots of different outlets, even the New York Times, lent strong support to the belief that the performer, Uri, truly possessed some psychic powers. You can find, like anything, you can find proof that he was actually psychic.
Right.
And you can find proof that he is just a really good magician and a fraud.
So if we take Chad's side, he is a magician with a little bit of a gift.
Yeah, and I can buy that.
All right.
You know, it's interesting. Based on kind of the Johnny Carson thing and the CIA thing, if I look at those two things together, I would venture to guess, in my opinion, that Uri Geller had a little bit of a gift. I mean, I think the CIA thing proves that, because I doubt the CIA is going to have any kind of testing where he's going to be able to mark a paper to tell what it is. I mean, there's just no way you're going to be able to do that, because they're legitimately looking for something. If they used him, it means he legitimately had a gift. The whole Johnny Carson thing, though, makes me wonder if he used that gift plus illusionist type skills to basically try to make a living as a psychic. Part of me says that, yeah, he probably had some abilities, and everybody in this room has dealt with people who have some abilities that we've been able to measure to an extent. We've been able to prove their claims to a reasonable level to our satisfaction. But I think, obviously, with the spoon thing on Johnny Carson, that he probably took that little bit and said, hey, I can make some money off of this if I can make this little thing seem like a much, much bigger thing and incorporate this, these cereal box tricks that I'm learning.
And use the credentials of the CIA to legitimize
right
your claims and then to expand on those and
then
move into the entertainment.
And the hard thing with that, and the sad thing, so to speak, and I think we can all attest to this just being in the paranormal field, is if you actually do have an ability, you actually do have a skill that's paranormal or supernatural or whatever, that's awesome, that's amazing. But the minute you get caught, even as a paranormal investigator, the minute you get caught fabricating anything, when you have a legitimate claim as a paranormal investigator or a psychic or medium or whatever, the minute you get caught BSing something, the credibility for all the legitimate stuff you've done is gone, and anything you do in the future is gone.
That's why we are very careful. We've always been very careful, and even since we first started in 2012. If we can't debunk it, we won't use it.
There's a photo from the Family Tree restaurant, and you probably know this photo, you've seen it, but it's purportedly to be of Lucy. And Beaker, who used to be on the show, he swore up and down that the photo was of Lucy. There was another person there at that event wearing a gray hoodie that it could have been. And honestly, I can't definitively say that's a paranormal picture, because it could very easily be that person in the hoodie. And Tim and I will argue that all day long. But I have to, in my mind, to feel good about having any of my claims legitimized, I have to say I'm not sure. I don't think that it is, because I can attest that there was somebody at that event with a gray hoodie, and I don't know where they're at when that photo was taken.
Yeah, we try, and when we post evidence, we don't post it if there's any question in our mind that it might be something else. I've heard some really cool EVPs, but there's one, and I don't even remember where it came from, but we're listening to it, and I said, I don't remember saying that, but I said, that sounds like me. Now, spirits can mimic your voice, but where it sounds like me, I just say I can't post that on a website, because I can't say that that's not me.
I've got a good example of that. I went on an investigation with Beaker and Lurch, and it was to a residential in Payson. And we went there, and as I was going through audio, at one point I had left the room for some reason or another. I can't remember what was going on. But I came back, got my audio recorder, took it home, and as I'm listening, I hear what sounds like a woman's voice singing, and I'm like, wait a minute. There is no woman there. It's kind of a high-pitched, kind of weird song, and I'm like, I got a really cool EVP. And I played it back for Lurch, and Lurch goes, oh, while you were gone, we're screwing around, and I was singing this song. But if he hadn't have told me it was him, I would have thought I had a cool EVP because I couldn't account for anybody, a woman's voice singing the song. And it's kind of a weird, like high pitched, kind of weird. I'm like, oh wow, that's
Sounds like Wirch being high pitched and weird.
But yeah, and so I was like, oh, I guess that's not an EVP because I was able to account for it after the fact. But so you got to be careful.
Right. I'm going to give you a little blurb I learned about Mr. Geller that might kind of explain some of the things he says and why all the magicians are kind of against him. Because it's very easy to think, oh, they were just jealous because he did these really cool things. As magicians, they have kind of a group. I don't know if you call it a guild or a, whatever it is. But they really take pride in creating convincing illusions. They felt like Uri was demeaning their craft because he would tell people that his abilities were beamed to him from a spaceship sent by a superior civilization in outer space.
Oh, that don't sound good.
Yeah, so that's not really helping his cause.
And that's what got him kicked out of the Magicians Alliance. I think I've made a huge mistake.
Now, aliens coming to Earth to do things, that's a whole nother podcast. And I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but the likelihood of it happening, in my opinion, is pretty low.
Here's the thing. I got to interject here. Here's the thing. Having been involved in this, having talked to people who've been abducted by aliens, having talked to people, all kinds of people, I think, honestly, more people accept the paranormal than they do aliens. But the minute you say that aliens are bringing messages to your mind, I think the vast majority of everybody goes, cuckoo. They think you're nuts.
Yep.
It sounds nuts. Even sometimes in the right company, and I think everybody in this room can agree with me, there's certain people you don't talk about the paranormal because they're going to think you're nuts because that's just that type of person that they're a non-believer and they're going to go, you're a nut.
Right. And I can't tell you how many people call us for residentials and hem and haw on the phone, and I have to say, just tell me what's happening. I won't call you crazy.
I say, and I've been there too. But the minute you start just talking to a random person about aliens beaming messages to your brain, people are going to think you're nuts. Unless you're at an alien convention, people are going to think you're nuts. It's just one of those things that sounds crazy.
Yeah, because it is.
Kind of is.
So all you supernatural hour, alien people,
we still love you.
I'm not saying they're not beaming messages to your mind. I just said it sounds crazy. But if they are, we want to hear about it.
So, just to kind of end on these other magicians,
I really think we should say if you have anything to comment, that you should comment us back on that alien.
you should. If you have some legit alien stories, I want to hear them because, as you can tell,
We need to hear
I'm
them.
open-minded to all sides of the story.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to James the Amazing Randi.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Okay, so I told you he wrote a book, that big long one.
Titled one?
Yeah.
He wrote another one.
Oh yeah.
Is the title as long?
No, it's called The Magic of Uri Geller.
Oh, another one just about Uri.
He's kind of obsessed in a negative way about
Obviously.
Uri.
I think he
So-
found a way to monetize something.
I do too.
The aliens were
I do
telling
too.
the aliens were telling Amazing Randy that we're not sending messages to Yuri.
He just barely passed away, I believe. He about almost 100 years old.
The
Randy?
Amazing
The
Randy.
Amazing Randy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it in this book, it pretty much just goes through and says that all of his tricks can be duplicated, and he uses, similar methods that any magician would use. He's
Right.
just put a twist on it, make
Make it a grander illusion.
exactly.
Right. I watched the Amazing Randy's TED Talk. He's not trying to, debunk everything, but at the same time, he's just trying to debunk everything. And I have to say, I kind of got tired of listening to him after a while. I put him on and I was like, okay, I'm going to value your opinion for a little while. But then after a while, I had to just shut him down.
There's some people that to a point, they start ignoring what's in front of them just for the sake of standing on their
Right.
platform. There's a guy, his last name is Nichols. I can't remember what his first name was, but he belongs to the Skeptical Inquirer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that organization. But basically, they're a hardcore science group that is just hell-bent on debunking anything and everything paranormal, anything and everything alien. I mean, anything that is not just hardcore, written, etched in iron science, they are going to try and debunk. And I respect what they do to an extent, but there's other stuff that you look at and there's really no good explanation, and they will just stand on that platform of it's BS, regardless of how much evidence is put in front of them.
Right.
And it sounds like this Randy guy's kind of the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not here to debunk everything, but I will debunk everything. And,
Right.
and it's almost annoying how hard they dig in on their
And he
stance.
actually put up $1 million and had it bonded, and he had it sitting there, and he had called out, so anybody that can come out and truly prove this, you can have my $1 million.
Oh, wow.
But I also remember when I used to study Ed and Lorraine Warren, they proved in a court of law that ghosts were real. So why didn't these two ever come together? And I know that Ed Warren kind of called him out on that. Well, we proved it in a court of law. Where's my money?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
If you're listening to this, I would like to hear your opinions. Send us an email at
aps.wisps, WISPS, .contact@gmail.com.
So send us your thoughts. I'm interested to hear what y'all have to say.
We would love to hear from you.
Okay, let's talk about our swag merchandise. You can get Supernatural Hour swag on advancedparanormal.com. Go to the merchandise tag. You'll link to TeePublic, and there you can see t-shirts, sweatshirts, banners, or as we call them, tapestries. We've got one right here in the studio.
It's pretty awesome.
Behind Castle. And Raven is wearing a Supernatural Hour t-shirt right now as we're
Hoodie.
talking.
Hoodie.
It's a hoodie.
It's a hoodie?
It's a hoodie.
That's nice.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
wintertime. It's hoodie weather.
And I've got my Supernatural Hour mug. Go to our website and do that. Also, if you become a patron, we'll send out swag and merchandise through there also.
You get a free t-shirt if you become a Patreon.
Well,
And
not
you-
just a Patreon. You got to get a certain level.
I know.
And you'll get insight into all the upcoming investigations, and you'll keep this awesome show afloat. And
And we might even bring Castle back.
yeah, I might come back.
Cool.
I have a $5,000 parents fee, but
Oh,
Wow.
I'll waive it.
Woo!
All right.
okay.
Stay spooky, my haunty friends.
We came.
Hey, good night.
We saw.
I love you, Nicholas.
We kicked ass. It's not the fun I do by myself.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.